Howdy folks, hope you're all having a good one, and welcome back to World of Warships with Rear Admiral Jingles, where today we're going to be joining Daishi 007 in the German premium Tier 9 destroyer, the ZF6. He's in a division with the new tech tree German Tier 9 heavy destroyer, the Felix Schultz, and the Japanese Tier 9 battleship, the Izumo. And we're in a Tier 10 domination battle here on the Tiers of the Cruisers map. So, the ZF6. I think this is the first ZF6 replay I have ever published. What's it like? Any good? Well, yes and no. That's not much of an answer, Jingles. That really doesn't help. Yes, I am aware of that. I'm sorry. Let me explain. The ZF6 is a German destroyer with a main battery reload booster, which allows it to fire 50% faster for 15 whole seconds. It's basically exactly the same reload booster that you get on the Mogador. Doesn't get hydro though. Honestly, I'd rather have hydro. And I'll explain why. The ZF6's guns are German 128mm rifles. Because they're German, they get that quarter caliber high explosive penetration, and the high explosive penetration on these guns is actually very good. The only problem is the high explosive DPM sucks. The shells just don't do enough damage. And when I say the high explosive DPM sucks, I'm not joking. I'm going to be borrowing heavily from some of Little White Mouse's graphs in today's video, and let me show you the comparative high explosive DPM of the ZF6's guns. Thank you, Mouse. On the right hand side of the chart you see the semi-armour piercing and high explosive DPM of all Tier 9 destroyers, and if you look towards the bottom you'll see the ZF6, fourth worst. It's really that bad. And it's only marginally better with the reload booster active. But hang on a minute, it has very impressive armour piercing DPM, and you are absolutely correct, it does. With the reload booster active firing armour piercing shells, it will outshoot everything except the Friesland. And it's still pretty competitive even without the reload booster up. But this chart assumes that every shot that you fire hits and penetrates. It doesn't over-penetrate, it doesn't ricochet, it doesn't shatter. And there's the problem. Despite these 128mm armour piercing shells having improved ricochet and penetration angles, the fuse on these shells requires that it goes through at least 21mm of steel in order to arm properly. Now that's fine when you're shooting at cruisers. It's okay when you're shooting at battleships, and again it's range dependent because, you know, the shell velocity drops off over distance, and they are fairly high velocity shells, but the problem here is when you're shooting at other destroyers, because Tier 8 and higher destroyers only have 19mm of armour. So if you get into a fight with another destroyer in the ZF6, you will lose the DPM fight if you're firing high explosive, and you will probably just over-penetrate if you're firing armour piercing. So, yeah. And you'll probably lose the DPM fight if you're firing high explosive, not just because your high explosive shells have shockingly bad DPM, but also you have very little health. Once again, I'm indebted to Little White Mouse for her amazing charts, but, well, that's the ZF6 third from the bottom when it comes to effective health of Tier 9 destroyers, including survivability expert and any healing potential. It's not good, is it? Now, on the off chance that you think I'm possibly exaggerating the problem with the armour-piercing shells, the enemy Z31 that Daishi is sharing this cap circle with has very generously volunteered to demonstrate. Watch the hit counters. I mean, he's getting penetrations. He's getting a lot of over-penetrations as well. And this is with the main battery reload booster up. 30 hits. And he didn't sink him. 13 over-penetrations, 1 ricochet, and 16 penetrations. That's the problem with the armour-piercing shells when you're engaging an enemy destroyer. He would have probably sunk him if he'd been firing the high explosive. However, if the Z31 had been firing back at him, and others of his team hadn't been shooting at the Z31, he would have probably lost the DPM fight, and you can't even rely on setting fires to dig you out of the hole, because the chance of fire on the ZF6 is horrendously bad as well. Once again, Little White Mouse to the rescue with another handy chart showing the potential fires per minute on the ZF6, and there it is, fourth from the bottom. It's a bit better if you have the reload booster up, but you don't always have the reload booster up and it doesn't last long enough, only 15 seconds. Some friendly torpedoes going into the smoke screen there, and that's a good angle. If the Z31 is still inside that smoke screen, he's going to eat one of those torpedoes. And he didn't eat one of those torpedoes because he's not inside the smoke screen, he's over there. And he was on such low health that, well, anybody could have killed him under those circumstances. But nevertheless, there's the first kill, and it is the first kill, it's the first blood award, for Daishi 007 in the ZF6. Now, the thing about the guns, more specifically the terrible DPM of the high explosive shells, the lousy fire chance of the high explosive shells, and the tendency to over-penetrate as much as you penetrate when you're engaging other lollyboats, none of this makes the ZF6 a bad ship. It just makes it a tricky ship to use well, because the ZF6 is a premium ship. Any old idiot can buy it and play it, but not any old idiot can play it well. It does have a couple of things going for it though. Its torpedoes are incredibly fast in comparison to other German destroyers with a speed of 75 knots. And they hit very, very hard, with not far short of 20,000 average damage. The problem is they only have 8 kilometers of range. Now, that doesn't mean you can't stealth torpedo in the ZF6. You can obviously abuse your smokescreen generator, such as Daishi is doing here, and the ship does have pretty good stealth. Daishi's gotten his surface concealment down to 5.8 kilometers. So there's a reasonable window of opportunity there for you to get your torpedoes away without being detected even in open water. But here's the problem with that. If you have to get to within 8 kilometers of your target in order to launch your torpedoes, you can do that thanks to the ship's better than average stealth, but it has worse than average speed. And if you get detected within 8 kilometers of an enemy target, and your top speed is only 35 knots, you're going to be in trouble. You see, the better than average stealth of the ZF6 combined with the worse than average torpedo range of the ZF6 encourages you to get into problems and situations that you're going to have a hard time getting out of when things inevitably go wrong. And you have the third worst effective health of all Tier 9 destroyers. So good luck with that. Like I said, none of this makes the ZF6 a bad ship. It just makes it a very, very tricky ship to play well. Should probably also talk about the other gimmick in the ZF6's toolbox. It has access to the defensive anti-aircraft fire consumer. So, hooray, I guess, except no, not really. And just for once, I'm not going to be ragging on aircraft carriers here. It's just that even with the defensive AA fire consumable, no aircraft carrier is going to be worried about doing a strike on the ZF6. It is not an Oyster-Yachtland or a Friesland. Its AA is about comparable with that of the Fletcher or the Chengmu. Or in other words, it has decent AA. But remember, this is decent AA in comparison to other Tier 9 destroyers, none of which have great AA, except for the Friesland and the Oyster-Yachtland. Oh, torpedoes. I think he's seen them in time. Yeah, he'll be okay. All in all, I would quite happily swap out the defensive AA consumable for hydroacoustic search given the choice, but you don't have the choice. So whose torpedoes were those? Was it the Ibuki? I can't remember how many the Ibuki launches it was. It could have been the Yugamo. He's over there somewhere. That was mostly a blind torpedo launch from Daishi 007, by the way, but check that out. Look at the Fantask. He didn't know he was there when he launched the torpedoes. I think he was hoping to catch the Ibuki, who was spotted on the other side of the island, even though he was 500 metres outside of torpedo range, but fingers crossed maybe he'll head this way. The Fantask, however, that he didn't know was there when he launched the torpedoes, is in torpedo range. Now, the Fantask is fast, but the torpedoes are faster. So that's a definite torpedo hit on the Fantask. Oh, there's the Yugamo. Yeah, those could have been his torpedoes from earlier. Oh, speaking of his torpedoes, the friendly Bismarck up ahead has just spotted them. Now, what follows here is kind of bizarre. The Bismarck waits until after the Yugamo has already launched all of its torpedoes before using his hydro. There it is. I mean, I suppose the Yugamo could have had the torpedo reload booster, except we know it can't because it's just popped a smoke screen. It can't have both. But the Bismarck has popped his hydro, and it's German hydro, so it's got very long range, but instead of closing in on the smoke screen and flushing out the Yugamo for his secondaries and the destroyer who's come over to back him up, he's instead turning away. Fresh torpedoes from the Yugamo? Well, yeah, but hydro's running. You don't have to worry about them. Ah, but he doesn't want to fight the Vladivostok. Well, why not? Turning away from the Vladivostok allowed the Russian tier rate to smack his broadside with armor-piercing shells, damage that he would not have taken if he just continued closing in on the Yugamo's smokescreen. He's got Daishi here to help him. If he hadn't changed course, the Yugamo would be spotted, and Daishi wouldn't have to rely on crossing his fingers and hoping that his torpedoes were going to hit him. Oh, now a Fiji's joined the party. Well, yeah, but he didn't know the Fiji was there at the time, did he? And he's got fire support from an Amagi, Daishi's ZF-6 and a Buffalo. The Fiji, however, has picked a remarkably poor time to break cover, not least of which because that is exactly the kind of target that the ZF-6's armor-piercing shells were designed for, but also surprise torpedoes are surprising, as is a surprise Fantask. And this is unfortunate, because the reload booster is on cooldown. The Fantask is not shooting, however, which means there are torpedoes on the way. Although, to be completely fair, the Fantask was caught on such low health that he didn't really have much of an alternative. So, yep, there they are. Now, this is going to be tricky. Daishi is kind of lucky that, well, except for the Yugamo just then, nobody has actually shot at him yet. And oh, that was masterfully done. This is what I'm talking about with the ZF-6's stealth, however. It's just sneaky enough to get you into trouble, but it's not fast enough to get you out of trouble when you're in it. He's stopped shooting, he's waiting for the stealth bloom to subside. There it is, stealth's back down to normal levels, he's managed to get away with it. But that could very easily have gone horribly, horribly wrong, because he wasn't expecting the Fiji to be there, he certainly wasn't expecting the Fantask to be there. If the Fiji hadn't run into one of his torpedoes, if the Fantask had emerged around the side of that island 10 seconds later than it did, he would probably be dead by now. But, well, the Fiji did run into one of his torpedoes, and the Fantask did come around the side of the island when it did, so they're all dead and he's not. And those torpedoes are looking fairly good for the Vladivostok. Yeah, he's probably going to take one. One would be nice. Two would be better. There's one. Is he going to take a second? He did take a second. There goes the Vladivostok. That just leaves the Yugamo. Now, how brave do you think he's feeling? Is he still hiding in that smokescreen? I guess we're going to find out. Sure would be nice if you could take Hydro instead of that main battery reload booster or defensive fire consumable, wouldn't it? There he is. Reload boosters back up. Make the most of it. It only lasts 15 seconds. Count the overpens. These AP shells require 21mm of armour to arm. The Yugamo only has 19. But, well, this would be one of those occasions where all you have to do is throw enough shit at the wall. Some of it is going to stick. Oh! No, he's got this. That's 3 times now he's threaded the needle between torpedo attacks. He's pretty good at that, isn't he? So, Kraken Unleashed. Well done. It's not good enough, though, is it? The enemy team have 2 of the 3 caps. Both teams have an equal number of kills, but that means that the enemy team are well over 150 points ahead and gaining more points with each passing second. Daishi has done well. He's got those 5 kills, and he had a fight for all of them. Unfortunately, he's miles away from anywhere, and his ship only has a top speed of 35 knots. He does have an engine boost, but it's on cooldown, and there's nothing special about the engine boost. It's fairly standard. It only gives you an 8% speed boost. So right now all he can really do, while he's desperately struggling to get back into position, is offer his team some moral support. Now you might be thinking, why doesn't he go for capture point A? I mean, it's open, there are no other enemy ships up there to contest it, and that's a good point, but it would also take him even further from the fight right when his team could probably use some additional firepower. For the moment at least, things are going to be in the hands of the rest of the team, and the Ismo and Felix Schultz appear to be making short work of the Ibuki. That was not a smart thing for the Ibuki to do. It's a notoriously poorly armoured heavy cruiser, and the Ismo, of course, is armed with a whole bunch of 16-inch guns. It looks like the Ismo is... I'm not quite sure what the Lion's up to. And it looks like the rest of the enemy team isn't quite sure what the Lion's up to. Why is he sailing away from the fight and leaving the Iowa to it? Although the Iowa does have a lot more health than the Ismo. And it doesn't look like the Amagi's really in a position to offer much direct assistance yet either. Some shots hitting the Ismo there from the Osterjotland, and it looks like the Amagi finally has the firing arcs, as does the Felix Schultz, and as does Daishi. Now you might be thinking, they're one kill up, and that Iowa has 3 times the health of the Ismo. Why doesn't the Ismo just ram it? And yeah, a lot of the time that is exactly what you would see happening. And it would still leave Daishi's team with a 1 kill lead. But ramming, while it's usually fun, should really only be used as a tactic of last resort. If you can nail the Iowa with your guns, then nail the Iowa with your guns. He's still dead, and you haven't had to sacrifice a ship in order to do it. And now they have a 2-to-1 advantage over the enemy team. And the points gap, despite the fact that the enemy team still have 2 caps, has narrowed considerably, which would not have been the case if the Ismo had chosen to go for the ram. Both teams would have sunk a battleship, but both teams would have lost a battleship, so it would have been a neutral points change. It wouldn't have affected the scores at all. You may also be thinking, why doesn't the Osterjotland just make a run for it? Because they're ahead on points, and there's nothing on Daishi's team that can catch him. Let the remaining ships go chasing after the Lion, while the Osterjotland just avoids dying for the next 3 minutes. Quite simply, there isn't enough time left. The gap in the points between the two teams is so small, and both the Amagi and the Felix Schultz are in the process of now flipping capture point Charlie, so that in the 3 minutes and change remaining, even if nobody else dies, Daishi's team are going to win on points. So the Osterjotland and the Lion, even though it looks like the Lion doesn't want to fight, they're going to have to. They must sink something, at the very least. And the Ismo is fully aware of this too, which is why he's tucked in around the side of the island, hidden from the Lion's guns, and why the Osterjotland has just popped up, because he's the only one on the enemy team in a position to shoot at him. Fortunately for the enemy team, the Lion has just decided to fight. Unfortunately for the enemy team, he did it by turning to give broadside to both the Amagi and the Ismo, who peeked out just long enough to give him multiple 16-inch bitch slappings. It's hard to see how the Osterjotland can actually win now, because he can no longer even run away. He's trapped. He's got lousy stealth, he's got Daishi cutting off his escape route from the north, and he's being herded by the Amagi with the Felix Schultz in company, and of course the Ismo just biding his time, waiting to shoot at something. Felix Schultz torpedoes out, highly speculative, but hey, you never know. I mean, Daishi's gotten lucky with his torpedoes twice so far today. Miracles may happen for the Felix as well. But it is not to be. What is the Osterjotland doing? Oh, he's trying to torpedo the Amagi. Well, that's fair enough. Although, it looks like he's missed. And now he's... I don't know if he was detected because he was firing, or it's difficult to say. I think he's actually close enough that the Felix Schultz picked him up and spotted him visually. And he's backed up against the corner, so there's very little chance he's going to get out of here, although he might be able to take the Schultz down before he goes. So fair play to him. He's at least not giving up and fighting it out to the bitter end. He might actually do it. It's not going to change the outcome, of course, and he has done it, so well done to the Osterjotland. At this point, the best thing that he could do for his own sake is to just continue shooting at the Amagi and maybe rack up some more damage, because he's not going... Is he going to try to stealth up again? I think he is. Yeah, he stopped shooting. Why? It's not like you're going to save on repair bills or anything, is it? It doesn't matter how much damage you take in a battle, every ship pays the same logistics resupply cost. Or maybe he's waiting for his torpedoes to come off cooldown. Either way, it's not going to make any difference, because the timer has just run out, and he's lost on points. So, Daishi 007 with an extremely creditable win. Confederate, Kraken Unleashed and First Blood, with 138,000 in the Tier 9 Premium ZF6. Not a great ship, but definitely not a bad ship either. It's just kind of tricky to be able to play it well. If you're interested in more details about the ZF6, I do highly encourage you to check out the link in the video description and go and read Little White Mouse's excellent review of this ship on the North American forums. She quite literally leaves no stone unturned in her analysis of what this ship can and cannot do. Her reviews really are the best around. And I hope you enjoyed today's video, because that's it for today. As always, take care, stay safe, and I'll catch you next time.